Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Kilayim, Chapter 1, Halacha 3, in the Art Scroll 3A2. It's going to be a very short Mishnah, a very short Gemara, and then I'm going to do Halacha 4, and if you want to do a daf, listen to Halacha 3 and 4 together, and that'll be a daf. Anyway, Mishnah 3 is going to cover leafy plants. We have leafy plants for cooking. Like today you have chard. You can go and buy chard, and that will be a leafy plant that you can cook, and you can put it into soups and stews, and it's quite nutritious. And we're going to be covering that. And there's a little bit of history on it. The chard, we're used to like the beets, like coming from beets. And the history of beets is going to be one where it wasn't really used as the bulb back then. Most of what the beet was used for was the leaves, although they could do the bulbs. And most of the modern form of beet you don't start to see until Europe, until the 16 and 1700s, and then it becomes very popular in France because it's very cheap and easy to grow in the 1800s, and then it spreads, in the 17 and 1800s into Eastern Europe and things like that. But the original area on where did these beets that were used for the leaves originate from, it was from the Mediterranean area. And in fact, they used to eat it here in Eretz Yisrael back in the day, as well as in the Roman areas and the Greek areas. It was commonly used for the leaves, and they would cook them. And also, you have what's going to be coming up in the list, the turnips. And the turnips are used for the leaves as well. You can also use it for the bulb, but a lot of what you would use the plant for would be the leaves. So really the idea is, we're creating this collection that's in Halacha 1, and it's going to be one set of vegetables, and as we saw in Halacha 2, it's going to be with melons and gourds, and now we're getting into leafy vegetables, and then in Halacha 4, it's going to be with trees. So Halacha 3 Mishnah says like this. This is going to, again, be more pairs of plants where this prohibition of Kilayim is not going to apply. And the Mishnah says that the turnip and the naphos, the cabbage and the wild cabbage, the chard and the common sorrel are not Kilayim with each other. So again, it's saying that it's like a variety. Now, again, the members of which exactly vegetable this is going to be hard to understand. This is sort of the guessing game that's going on. So naphos, as we see with this pair of the turnip, that's unclear. Rambam is going to call it naphos and say it's like a radish. Other people, like the Rosh Hashanah, are going to say it's a type of turnip. And Kilayim is going to say that it's the rape plant. It's called the Brassica napus, and that's going to have a leaf and a bulb that's going to look like a turnip. And again, the organization of the plants is going to be a little bit different than the Linnaean system. Some of it is going to be based on the shapes of the leaves, the taste of the leaves, and similarity like that, rather than the modern taxonomy that you're going to see today. So we're dealing with plants that are not Kilayim together because in the Gemara thinking and the Mishnaic thinking, they're basically like a variety of the same species. And again, like lephet, which is turnip, it's going to be something that's going to look similar to this other leaf and bulb in the naphos. And I guess you could take certain varieties of radish and put them together with a turnip and look at the bulb, and it will look similar. And also, radish leaves are pretty good in salads. I've bought them at the shuk before, where they'll sell the leaves attached to it, and I've washed the leaves and made them into salads, and they're a little bit spicy like the radish, and it's pretty good. Anyway, so they're not going to be Kilayim with each other. Again, the idea about the chard, this is going to be like a type of beet, but This should not be thought of as the red beet that you have today. That's going to be the popularized sugar beet, and that is only going to be a recent phenomenon, really back in the 17 and 1800s, to try to get sugar because there was a sugar shortage in Europe. And also, by the way, when you're looking at some of these other plants like the sorrel and things like that, you shouldn't confuse this with spinach, because this was only introduced into Eretz Yisrael at the time of the Muslim conquest. So some of the plants you have to look at, like, was this here back in the time when the Jews were here in the land, writing down this Mishnah and using and cooking with this stuff. There's another commentary, by the way, on the cabbage, that perhaps it's not going to be cabbage, but it's going to be kale, which is going to be a variety of cabbage, and it's going to be where the leaves are not going to form a head, and the leaves are going to grow very tall. So these are going to be a feature that is going to be more similar with the kale plant than what you would see in the modern cabbage plant, that has this like very solid core and stem that the leaves are going to be growing out of. So the Rambam is actually going to be calling it cabbage, but the Rosh Cirilio is going to be saying it's a variety of kale. By the way, kale and cabbage are related to each other. So that's something else to keep in mind. So it's not far off, but as you can see, if you go shopping and buying some kale, it's going to be a little bit different than cabbage. So the Tana is going to add 3 more pairs, and this is going to be the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, but not the opinion of the Tanna Kama. Tanna Kama are going to disagree with this. Rabbi Akiva adds in this Mishnah garlic and wild garlic, the onion and wild onion, the Egyptian lupine, the wild lupine are not Kilayim with each other. Now, the Rambam is going to write in his commentary in the Mishnah that the Halacha does not follow Rabbi Akiva, and it is clear that the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Akiva disagree, with Rabbi Akiva ruling that these are 3 pairs and that they're not Kilayim with each other, but the Tanna Kama are going to be ruling that they actually are, that they are Kilayim with one another. So a little bit interesting to see like which variety they would be talking about. And, in the Rambam commentary, he's saying that, there's this kind of garlic, this wild garlic, that's going to be a single clove, and that's going to be used for a medicinal purpose. And the Rosh is going to be adding that this is a variety of garlic that's smaller than the garden variety. And so in the wild form, that there might be this thing out there that we're just not familiar with. And then you also have the Rambam commentary is talking about a small onion. The wild onion is this very, very small onion. And then there's another one that's going to be talking about these beans. And in Latin, the Rambam is going to be saying that it's referring to, which would be the Latin term for lupinus termis. And it's going to be something that the Bavli Beitza 25b says that has to be cooked 7 times because it's so bitter. So again, you have a look there. The Gemara is going to be listing each pair in the Mishnah and identifying the second member of the pair. And the Gemara says the turnip and the naphos, and the latter is naphots. And the cabbage and the wild cabbage, and the later is a small cabbage. Now, the Vilna Goan is going to be looking at this a little bit differently, and it's going to be modifying this text a little bit different, and he's going to be deleting the words where it's going to say ve'hanafos at the end, and his reason is going to be that the present text does not give any identification for the species at all. So even if you're going to say instead of the naphos, it's naphots, and like ending in like a TZ or a tzadik or something like that. So Vilna Gaon just deletes it because you don't know what the naphots is, and nobody does. So, or at least nobody alive or in the last few hundred years knows what it is. So then you have the next set, the cabbage and the wild cabbage. The later is the small cabbage, and that's basically, says the Rambam, is it has a very short stem. Then you have the next set, which is going to be where you have chard and the common sorrel. And the Gemara says the later is the chamuyan. And according to the Aramaic, it's saying something that turns sour, and that, in other words, it's trying to identify this plant, the common sorrel, as something that has a sour taste. And there are leaves that have a sour taste. Now we get into the next set, which again the Tanna Kama disagrees with. Rabbi Akiva added the garlic, the wild garlic, and says that the later is the tamnisa. And this is, it's hard to know like what is the tamnisa, because again, this is some plant that they're talking about from 2,000 years ago, and which exact wild form of garlic is this? Hard to say. The next set is the onion and the wild onion, and the latter is the palalgula. And this is a term that the Rosh Hashanah says is for a wild onion, or it could be like a radish, and Rabbi Akiva must be holding that a radish and an onion are not Kilayim with each other, but again, the Tanna Kama don't hold that way. And the idea is that Tanna Kama are going to be saying that since the onions and radish have little resemblance with each other, it's going to be Kilayim with each other. And then you have the final one, and that will end the Gemara, where it says the white lupine and the wild lupine, and it says the latter is the parmuach. And this is going to be the Gemara's name for the wild lupine. And then that's it. And I think one of the takeaways on this very, very short Gemara and very short Mishnah is that, again, in the taxonomy, the names are kind of lost in history. It's hard to know exactly which kind of variety or which kind of plant that we're talking about. And there's a lot of guesswork, and you have to go back to the Meforshim. But anyway, this is worth learning, because it's going to start setting up, later for creating these rational farms. And rational farms do matter, because in order to fulfill the halachot, there's a lot of food around the halachot. And if you get it wrong, well, like in separating out trumos and demai, or like in farming and, with shvius and sanctity, if you get it wrong, you can end up where you have something that's ruined and you can't get any use out of it. So, for instance, if you are doing something that's going to be Kilayim with your barley, can you use the barley for the omer? You cannot. You can't take that barley. You've ruined it. So, getting this right does matter. Anyway, have a great day.